Shalom, friends. I'm here on this beautiful morning reflecting on the last several days of events, and one of the things that has been coming up in my mind in the last several hours here is not the macro story. Everyone knows that story. It's being published in every conceivable means that we have in society today. But rather, I'm more interested in the micro story. The stories of kindness between humans that are not making the headlines. Those acts that are moments of generosity, those acts of kindness and goodness when it seems that many people are so focused on getting their needs met, what we need to survive in these days. I'm more focused on that micro story. Because it's these days that we'll begin to learn what it really means to v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love our neighbor as ourselves. Because that love of neighbor, stranger, and enemy is a demonstration of the vertical love that we say that we have of the Father. And as we show the kindness of God out into a world that is presently manic, losing its mind, going crazy, panicked, fearful, we begin to calm people's fears. There's an episode in the Gospel of Mark that we read of, and it happens in Mark chapter 12, beginning in verse 41. Messiah and the disciples are sitting near the Treasury at the Holy Temple. And this is an area that you would bring your offerings to. You would deposit your coins or whatever you were giving monetarily. And down towards the end, out of the way, where nobody would pay attention, was for the smallest, the least worth. The offerings of least worth were brought into the corner, we might say, out of the way, out of the public eye. No one was sounding the trumpet from down there. Messiah observes a widow who takes over and drops in her 2 mites, her 2 coins that don't even add up to a penny. In our eyes, it would be worthless. But Messiah draws the attention of his disciples and says, look, everyone else over here is giving out of their surplus. She's giving out of her poverty. She's giving everything, her livelihood. The word there for livelihood is bios, and it literally means her life. Messiah is saying she's giving her life into the will of the Father. She's handing herself. We pray it, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. This is a demonstration of praying and living that principle. She gave her life to the will of the Father. No one else was noticing except God. See, in these days, we're going to have those moments where we think that little bit of charity, that little bit of kindness that we're doing is worthless. No one's paying attention, but it's meaningful to that person. It's meaningful to that family. Let's move past the panic. Let's move past the fear. What's going to happen is in the hands of God. And those of us who claim faith, we have to walk in faith during these days and not in fear. We've not been given a spirit of fear. We have not. So let's walk in these days in faith, in the fullness of faith, trusting that, you know what, no one else is watching. No one else cares about the little things that we do except for the little things that we do that are impacting people. See, I'm not as concerned about the macro story, the whole story that everybody's telling. I am concerned and most fascinated by the micro story, those stories that happen between people, those moments that were impactful for the other, that changed their perspective on these days. Because those micro stories will become the meta story, the collection of stories that inspire later generations as they read back on this coronavirus pandemic. So let's join together. Let's join together and be part of those micro stories that becomes part of the greater meta story that is impacting people's lives for their good, not because anybody else is watching, but because the Father is there with us, inspiring to do these actions. I pray you're inspired by this today and maybe a little bit less fearful of what we are facing. let's move through with faith and not fear, and calm and surety that the Father has this well in hand. If you like this and you're inspired by it, like it, share it. Don't hide it away. It's not for anybody's glory but the Lord. Amen. Amen.